Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good whatever time of day it is, wherever you are right now. Thank you for tuning in to the Conversations with Dr. Don Show. Conversations with Dr. Don Show. The show is produced and broadcast from Portland, Oregon, USA. And for your first-time viewers, Conversations with Dr. Don is an ongoing series of one-hour standalone talk shows where I interview interesting people like most of you out there, about who they are as unique, one-of-a-kind individuals, and about what we've decided to talk about. And we'll be talking about the relevance of Democratic presidential campaign platforms. The relevance of Democratic presidential campaign platforms. That is loaded, but we will have my friend here, Dr. Sam Metz. Dr. Sam Metz. Thank you again for coming on. You've been on so many times, I forget your name even.
It's always a pleasure, Don.
I deserve that.
We first spoke together, I think, in 2009. Mm-hmm. This show was the genesis of the Mad as Hell Doctors. It all began right here on your show. First time we got together.
Yeah.
And the four of us who are on that show have been back several times. Thank you very much. All to talk about health care, usually about single payer.
Yes. Very good. And you're back again.
Wouldn't turn you down when you invite me to. Thank you.
Stick-to-itiveness. All right. So we'll start off by doing the first half of the show, our first 15 minutes or whatever, with your personal bio stuff. You're familiar with all these questions, and you may have a different answer now, but I doubt it. But we have different viewers now. Asking your best friend, who is Sam? Who is Sam? Be your best friend. Sam Metz's what?
He's a cranky, quirky guy who reads, thinks, and speaks a lot about health care, sometimes to the exasperation of his family. He's a father of a 20-year-old trans son, and I like to think of myself as a good father, good husband. I'm still a good son, too. My mother is even older than you are, Don. She's certainly older than I am.
I hope so. Yeah.
Yes.
So.
Also a retired physician. Worked as an anesthesiologist for my entire career. So, but I promise I won't put you to sleep tonight. I've retired.
Well, was that the gas passer in?
Yes, and not many people get paid good money to pass gas. I did.
Yeah. How long have you been retired?
Including today. About 2 years.
You miss it?
No. Healthcare policy and reform has expanded to fill all available time. It's working for healthcare reform is steady work.
Yes.
Even steadier than healthcare itself.
You got a good retirement. You don't get paid for all this work you're doing in behalf of healthcare.
No, at the moment nobody pays to listen to me. But you'll be the first to know if that changes. I'll still come back for free.
Good. Okay. And you're, when and where were you born? Remember that?
Well, I was there, but I don't remember much. I was born in Washington, D.C. And at...
the hub of all activity.
Yes, but my parents got out of there quickly. I was 2 years old, and I was raised and spent most of my formative years in Phoenix, Arizona.
Phoenix.
Back then, it was a very large, small town, and now it's a massive, small town.
By the time I get to Phoenix,
Nobody
she'll be
gets
waiting.
nobody gets romantic about Phoenix. It's-
And why were you born?
Why?
Why does everyone ask me back that same question? Why?
Well, I
Why?
don't want to have to draw you a diagram about where babies
Never
come
mind
from.
medical reasons.
No, I'm continuing a tradition. I'm a second generation American. 3 of my 4 grandparents and all of my great grandparents came from the old country, and we're doing our best to pay our country back for allowing our grandparents in. So that's why I'm here.
Okay. Yeah. Anything significant about your racial, national, or cultural heritage that's worth repeating for the viewers? Maybe there isn't.
Well,
Maybe just
I'm a-
plain old white bread.
Well, I'm a good Jewish boy. Actually, I got all the good parts out of being Jewish, except for the guilt. Nobody escapes that.
You're a delight. And you're still a practicing Jewish person?
No, I'm almost entirely secular now, but it's culture. It's who I am. You never stop being Italian. You never stop being Jewish. Whether you want to or not.
Is it because of the guilt?
Yes, one of several drivers. Actually, each year at Passover, I and the rest of my family join my mother's Seder table in Phoenix, still in Phoenix, and I'm the big man put on the yarmulke, and I conduct the Seder.
Really? How wonderful.
Yes, I'm thrilled with that.
And we talked about your education, your medical education, and you have any other education beyond your medical training and education?
Well, unlike you, I never got trained in music, so no, the only formal training I have is in medicine. I've taken intriguing classes at our very own Portland State University. No other degrees, though. I did contemplate going back for a history degree.
Why?
I love history, but before I went too far with that plan, I discovered I much more enjoy reading history than writing history. So I'll...
The historians are just wonderful reading, huh?
Yeah. The best historians come from journalism, not from academics. But that's a discussion for another time.
And you've got a million of them. So we know what you did in your work life, and your retirement life is working for health care reform.
Yes, and it's especially complex now with the presidential campaign, because we have got this whole field of poppies growing up, all of these candidates who are clamoring to be the Democratic presidential nominee.
Clamoring is the word.
I sure wish there was that sort of competition in the Republican Party, but that's not the way it is, unfortunately.
But there is a Republican who is challenging Trump, isn't there?
No one seriously,
No
and it would be
seriously.
highly unlikely that, well, talk about history. There's only been one seated president in American history who was denied nomination by his own party, and that was an obscure president, Franklin Pierce, who was so obscure he deserved not to be renominated. So I'm afraid we know what the Republican lineup is going to be. But we don't know what the Democratic lineup is going to be.
But the Republican nominee is representing a cult. Isn't that a cult, Trumpism?
In fact, a columnist for the New York Times, Charles Blow,
Yeah.
called the Trump base, their dedication to President Trump, as a folk hero. Charles Blow was just amazed that his mother, who believed in liberty, freedom, racial equity, equality, growing up in Louisiana, was absolutely dedicated to one of the most corrupt governors in Louisiana history. And that's saying a lot, I have to say.
Yes.
And this columnist was trying to figure out why his mother was so devoted to this corrupt career politician.
Huey Long?
Pardon?
Huey Long?
Actually, it was Edwin Edwards, much more recently.
Oh, yes.
And he figured it out. Just like Donald Trump and Huey Long, another good example, these men they were the Robin Hoods of their day. They could do no wrong. And I think that's an apt analogy. Donald Trump is the mascot for disenfranchised rural Americans. And when your mascot bites somebody, you don't destroy the mascot. You just say, he's our mascot. He can't do any wrong. Keep your fingers away from him. And Donald Trump is like that. There's nothing he can do or say that would end the dedication that he commands from his core base.
Is that a character disorder, or is it just a bad seed?
You don't have to come from a bad seed to be a corrupt politician. And while Donald Trump would probably deny that he's corrupt, I would say that the only sure policy he has is he will act in favor of old white rich men. He will never go back on that.
Irredeemable narcissism, huh?
In fact, if you look at the term narcissism in medical dictionaries, medical websites, all of which were written before Donald Trump, he could be the poster child. But he's our president now, and if we're not careful, he's going to be president again in 2020. If every voter in this coming election does exactly what they did in 2016, Donald Trump will be reelected. So we need to find a Democratic candidate who can convince at least a few Trump voters to vote Democrat. And that candidate has to be more appealing to Trump voters than Hillary Clinton. That's a tall order. And that's what these Democratic debates are about. All of these Democrats are trying to position themselves differently and distinctively, but they can't run too far from the center. Otherwise, they could be yet another Democratic candidate who wins the popular vote and loses the Electoral College. And no matter what your presidential platform is, you're not going to be able to do much if you don't get elected. And in this case, it would also be helpful to have the Democrats take the Senate back. Because just like the Democratic House has stopped President Trump from enacting many laws, a Republican Senate will stop a Democratic president, as they did Barack Obama, from enacting any laws. So this candidate, whoever we pick as the Democratic candidate, needs to pick up some Trump voters, especially in swing states, win the presidency, and if they're lucky, get just enough to get a majority in the Senate.
Well, you're going to have to do something with that name. It's poison, Democrat. Never mind, let me stop digressing too much. Do you have a wife, a husband, a companion, or somebody like that?
I have a wife, Margaret Jennings, who has her own campaign. She works relentlessly for Planned Parenthood, and not just the Planned Parenthood here in Oregon, but the Planned Parenthood in South Texas.
Mm-hmm.
Why South Texas? Boy, if you have an unwanted pregnancy, one of the last places you want to be is in South Texas. It's as difficult to find reproductive care in Texas almost as it is in Alabama and Georgia.
Yeah.
And in Missouri, for that matter.
That's a real dilemma.
Yes, it's
Planned Parenthood and their existence. And when does life commence?
We could say it commences when we have an aroused male who wants sex but doesn't want to support a child, and who acts impulsively. Every unwanted child has a father.
Isn't that genetically driven?
Yes, there are a lot of things that are genetically driven that we've had to moderate so we can enjoy civilization.
Wow.
So if we followed all of our impulses, every day would be a white supremacist rally.
It's such a pleasure talking to you about anything. Yeah. So, and how about children or grandchildren?
I have the one 20-year-old, and he's more than enough. Thank you very much. And if I'm lucky, I'll go senile before I become a grandparent, because I want my son to have a good, intriguing, satisfying life before he has to make the commitment to being a parent. Yeah. Not that it's possible, impossible to have that kind of life afterwards. It's sure a lot harder, though.
Yeah. Memberships in your political persuasion, need I ask you that again?
Don't tell anybody, but I'm a registered Democrat.
That's not political. That's, never mind. I'm not going to go there anymore. How about becoming a democratic socialist like Bernie Sanders? And we have somebody else in government now who's a democratic socialist.
I missed that.
What's her name?
We're not.
Oh, is she a candidate?
I think she's a candidate.
I'm wishful thinking. I'm a democratic socialist, of course. Memberships in political, social, or civic organizations.
Well, I'll surprise you by, I won't slap it on the table, but I'll tell you I have a concealed weapon permit from Oregon. I'm not packing heat now, but I was talking so much about firearm safety. I finally figured out there are so many firearms in this country. There are 400 million firearms in a country of 330 million people, that the chances of me encountering a firearm are high enough that I should know how to handle one safely.
That makes me sad.
Sorry to hear that, Don.
And I deliberately not answer the question if it's put to me on my show about firearms or anything to do with having firearms or so that. And I belonged to the NRA for years before I learned what they were really about. So it illustrates where I've been on the political continuum in terms of having weapons, but not automatic weapons or weapons of war.
I talked to my wife about keeping a firearm at home. She made 3 points, all of which are valid. One is, she said, she's in greater danger of being shot to death by me, her generic partner, than she is by a stranger. In the United States today, an American woman is more likely to be shot and killed by her husband, her partner, her spouse, than she is by a housebreaker, a mugger, a rapist, a mass shooter, a terrorist. 2, she said, if that firearm at home goes off and kills somebody, there's a 90% chance it'll kill somebody we know, including one of us. It's another statistic.
Profound.
And thirdly, she says, the highest risk for a teenage suicide is not bullying, it's not depression, it's not grades, it's the presence of a firearm at home. And she said, we've got a 19-year-old. So those are 3 good reasons for not having a firearm.
Then what am I going to do about that security of knowing there is a firearm, if I have one, that will give me that feeling of protection?
That feeling of protection is real, and it comes with a cost. And the cost is that feeling of protection could kill somebody you love. And the odds are in the United States, if it kills anybody, it will kill somebody you love. Over 80%, we're getting a little off the original topic, but 80% of the firearms deaths in the United States are the person who does the killing and the victim know each other.
Okay. Persons from the past or alive today that you particularly liked or admired. Why? From even the past, distant past, or recent past, or alive today. Any names come to mind besides me?
Don, you are a model for us all. You have been fighting the good fight probably longer than almost anybody I know. So thank you for doing your work and doing this show. It's a good tool. Somebody I admire, Charles de Gaulle.
Charles de Gaulle.
That's right. The fall of France. All of France is being overrun by German troops, and the French government says, we don't want to fight a war, not on our territory, so we'll collaborate. And he didn't want to do that. He went to London, he fled to London, he was just a few days as a Deputy Assistant Minister of Defense. He was the highest ranking French government official who didn't collaborate with the Germans. Got to London, sent out a broadcast and said, all you French who still want to keep fighting, come join me.
Free French.
That's right. And when he first broadcast, 0. Just a handful of French. It took him years to put together a Free French coalition that actually would fight against the Germans. And then when the war was won and France was liberated, the new French government said, we don't need you anymore. So he retired to his home on the pension of a brigadier general. And 10 years later, France is being torn apart by the Algerian independence question. We're talking bombings, shootings. We're talking tanks on the streets of Paris. And the French government said to Charles de Gaulle, come back. And he did. And he became the new French president, 1958. And he governed France for 8 years. He had a referendum on something he thought was vitally important to French interest. He said, if the French people don't vote for this, I'll resign. And the French, being the French, didn't vote for it. And he resigned, and he went back to his home with his wife that he was dedicated to, and lived out the rest of his life on the pension of a brigadier general. There's some integrity there that I admire. Single-mindedness and some absolute devotion.
Integrity.
Yes. This man did not profit from anything he did.
He was absolutely principled. Huh?
Sometimes it's hard to tell someone who's absolutely principled from a maniac, but Charles de Gaulle was on the right side of that line.
Beautiful. Any others come to mind?
Well, I thought Sandy Koufax was a great pitcher. The world's greatest left-handed Jewish pitcher. Had the lowest ERA of his time. He could throw a fastball and a curveball with the identical pitching motion, so the batter didn't know until the ball was a third of the way to the plate is that ball going to come at me, or is it going to go to the side? He was an absolute wizard. It's hard to pitch any ball at 90 miles an hour and hit a target that's about 60 feet away, that's just less than a yard by a yard. But to paint the edges of the box and to do it in a way that the batter can't guess where that pitch is going to be, but it's going to be in that box, got to be pretty good to do that.
Did you study baseball too?
You may hear these guys complain that they grew up and then discovered their mothers threw out their baseball card collection. My mother didn't.
Oh.
I've still got my baseball cards from 1959, 1960.
Have you really?
I thought I'd be able to retire on their worth, but I need to wait a few more years.
That's interesting. What kind of other secrets do you have? Well, we don't have time now. We only got another hour left.
Well, it's good that they're still secret, so
Okay.
I could tell you, but then I'd have to kill you.
All right. Okay. So now it's time for us to stop, and we can go into the subject of...
Yes, the Democratic candidates.
Yes.
Where do they stand on health care? Here's a good algorithm to distinguish this herd that's galloping toward us.
Okay, let's pause now and take a break, and then we'll come back and we'll go into that. Okay, we're back, and thanks for staying tuned. And I've got Sam Metz here, Dr. Sam Metz, who's been around a long time, been on my show a number of times in the past 10 years, and it's always fun to have you here, not just for your intellect and your sharp mind and wit. But you have an incredible intelligence, and my wife yells at me for talking about people's intelligence. Never mind that. I appreciate you personally.
Well, thank you. If only my son could regard me with the same admiration that you do, we'd have a quieter family, I think.
Yeah, a stage?
I beg your pardon?
Is that a stage for him?
Well, he actually is pretty good to me, but he's got a mind of his own. You know, that'll happen to kids.
Yes.
So I should probably be thankful for that.
We shouldn't go to our kids anymore.
Right.
My oldest daughter was convinced, even to this day, that she was abducted by space aliens. Roman Catholic family. My oldest daughter abducted by space aliens, still believes it. But I don't talk to her, and she doesn't talk to me anymore.
Well, if only you were an alien, maybe she talked to you more.
For you viewers who missed the opening of the show, Conversations with Dr. Don is an ongoing series of one-hour standalone talk shows where I interview interesting people, like most of you out there, about who they are as unique, one-of-a-kind individuals, and about whatever it is we have decided to talk about tonight. And we're talking about the relevance of Democratic presidential campaign platforms. The relevance of Democratic presidential campaign platforms. And we've got three basic questions here. And we're going to start off with you.
Yes. Here's, it's who knows where to start with all of these different candidates.
20?
Yes. So we should keep in mind that when these candidates talk about a healthcare platform in particular, we should be mindful that it really works on three levels. The first one is, what is their ideal healthcare system? And they vary. The second question is, what is their plan for getting there? Is it the short road or the long road? And then we also have to remember, lastly, that they have to get elected. So each candidate has to guess what the American public will tolerate in terms of changing our healthcare system.
So that's why we're going to talk about the platforms?
Yes, there are three basic platforms. Everything's going to be in sets of threes. That's how I remember things.
Mm-hmm.
At one end of the spectrum over here, on the viewer's left, shall we say, are the candidates who say, we're not going to change the rules. We're changing the game. We need a whole new healthcare system. And the best example of that is Bernie Sanders, who says, we're getting rid of everything. We're going to expand Medicare to include everyone. And Tulsi Gabbard and Andrew Yang are sort of in that set on this extreme. At the other extreme are candidates who say, we're not going to change the game, we're just going to change the rules. So these are candidates who say, let's build on the Affordable Care Act. Let's build on employer-based, employer-sponsored insurance. And the best example of that would be Joe Biden. It's hard to know where Kamala Harris is, but she's probably somewhere there. And then in the minor leagues, we have Marianne Williamson and Steve Bullock from Montana. And then in between, we have all of these candidates who are some sort of variation on public option, lowering the Medicare age, Medicare buy-in. And those are really squirrely kinds of things to do. So that would include Elizabeth Warren, Pete Buttigieg, our neighbor Jay Inslee.
In Washington?
In Washington, yes. as opposed to our neighbor Kamala Harris in California.
Yes.
We got neighbors everywhere. The difficulty is whatever healthcare platform a Democrat comes up with, they have to sell it not to the Democrats, but for reasons that we talked about before, they have to recruit at least a few Republicans to buy into it in the swing states.
From that cult?
Well, there are a lot of them out there. At least, remember, there are 60 million people who voted Republican in the 2016 presidential election.
They had a different motivation than health care.
That's correct.
Yes.
So if we're going
Racism? Never mind.
if we're going to entice these voters to vote Democrat, a healthcare platform has to appeal to Republicans, at least a few of them, 1% of them, to win this presidential election. Now, a bit of good news,
Mm-hmm.
and your viewers will hear it here first. Last week, the Elway Research Company in Seattle conducted a poll of Oregonians for...
Not John Elway, is it?
No, Stuart Elway. Stuart Elway runs a polling organization that gets a ranking from 538.com, Nate Silver's organization.
Mm-hmm.
He's rated A+ for the quality of his research.
Okay.
And out of 100 or 200 polling organizations, only 6 of them have an A+ rating. He's one of them.
Mm-hmm.
He asked a series of 20 questions. Before I get to that, I'll tell you that the poll was sponsored by Warren George of Corvallis, Oregon. He's a retired Republican businessman.
Hmm.
Warren and I differ on our healthcare beliefs. The results of this poll on healthcare, 400 Oregonians polled, surprised Warren, surprised me, and surprised the pollster. The question was, would you consider a statewide universal health care plan that would not only be run by a state agency, but would double or even triple your taxes? 60% of Oregonians said, I consider that. Tell me more. It's nearly 2 out of 3 Oregonians who are so desperate for better health care that they won't kick somebody off their porch who says, how about if I double your taxes? Think how intensely people want a better health care plan that somebody can say, I'll double or triple your taxes. Are you still listening? 2 out of 3 of them will say, I'm still listening.
So that would overcome racism and classism and the super rich?
It means that in almost every community in Oregon, people don't care about being Democrats or Republicans. They care about getting health care to their family.
Wow.
And they're not seeking the ideal health care plan. They just want better health care.
Sure.
Now, I'd like to take this as carte blanche for single payer, but it isn't. But it does mean that every candidate, at least in Oregon, and every elected official needs to have a conversation about health care. No longer can somebody in the public eye say, we're not going to talk about health care, we're going to talk about something more important. Well, now there's nothing more important. Now nobody can hide behind the wall that says, I can't talk to my constituents about raising taxes. Yes, you can. You can say, I'll double your taxes. Are you still listening to me if I'm talking health care? And your constituents will say, yeah, what's your plan? So we need plans, which means that the Democratic candidate for president needs to have a plan, not a perfect plan,
Mm-hmm.
But they can afford to have a different plan than what we have now, and there'll still be people listening to them. 2 out of 3 will listen to them.
Do you think Oregonians are going to lead the way in coming up with an acceptable plan to what's going on now?
If it were up to me, yes. By the way, your viewers can see the results of this poll from July of this year at variedstrengths.com.
Varied strengths.
Yes, it's there on the camera. I think the reason why this poll uncovered all of this pent-up desire for a better healthcare system is it was specifically framed as a state plan. This tells me that voters in Oregon have more faith that in their legislators in Salem to come up with a reasonable health care plan than U.S. Congress people in Washington. I think the take-home message for this is healthcare reform begins at home.
Wouldn't that be socialized medicine?
You're baiting me with a
I'm glad you can see what
key
you mean.
term.
Yeah.
You know, socialized medicine means whatever someone wants it to mean.
Yes, of course.
So just a quick review. To Democrats, socialized medicine is what they do in England.
Yeah.
For Republicans, it's any plan proposed by a Democrat. And for physicians, it's any plan that pays us less. That's your definition of socialized
Too
medicine.
much.
This poll by Elway Research doesn't say that Oregonians are clamoring for socialized medicine. It says they want a better healthcare system. And by telling them that it may cost them more taxes, they're still listening. That's a lot of power.
Yes.
Now, unhappily, before any state can truly implement any universal health care system, there has to be a states' rights health care super waiver from Congress that lets an individual state like Oregon overcome all of the nearly dozen federal laws that would stand in the way of a universal care plan in any state.
Wouldn't the Trump Justice Department find some sort of a way to have the Supreme Court overrule any judgment of the Oregon voting public?
If there's no waiver, if Congress does not pass a law saying states, if they want to establish universal care, can without violating laws. If Oregon were to pass a law now that tried to include everybody, it wouldn't be unconstitutional. It'd be illegal. There's nothing in the Constitution against health care. Health care doesn't appear in the Constitution. But there are federal laws like ERISA, the Affordable Care Act, Medicaid, Medicare, and a host of other laws that say states can't do what they want. The federal government has to tell them how to spend their health care dollars.
Sure.
With a waiver then, with congressionally authorized waiver, then Oregon could create a universal care plan with or without private insurance, with or without socialized medicine, with or without single payer, without any of those key words. Oregon could do that and it would be constitutional, it would be legal.
Any precedent for this kind of stuff you're talking about?
Last year, U.S. Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal of Washington submitted the State-Based Universal Health Care Act of 2018, which did exactly what we're talking about. If Congress were to pass that law, pass that bill, then any state could go to the Secretary of Health and Human Services and say, we qualify for an Affordable Care Act exemption because we're insuring just as many people, same benefits. We're not asking for any increase in the federal debt. So not only do we want a waiver from the Affordable Care Act, which is possible now, we want a waiver from everything else. Now that bill never came to a vote, and this year it's going to be resubmitted by another U.S. representative from California.
What about McConnell?
You know, it's a good question, because if this is framed not as a stepping stone to socialized medicine, but as a states' rights bill that moves the healthcare initiative from Washington to the state capitals, that's a Republican value. This can be sold as a Republican plan. It says the initiative needs to come from the feds, needs to come to the states.
Give me more. What's going to happen now?
Representative Khanna has not yet resubmitted this bill. There's some good signs. Last year, in 2018, Representative Jayapal's bill only had 7 sponsors out of 435. But 3 of the sponsors were Oregon U.S. representatives. Earl Blumenauer, Suzanne Bonamici, Peter DeFazio were 3 of the 7 co-sponsors. Oregon is behind this. Oregon is going to be the driving energy for state-based universal care. We have 3 congresspeople who are in favor of it. We've got 60% of Oregonians who are demanding that the state do something about their health care. This is a significantly powerful combination.
So will Oregon be the leader on the left coast?
It could be the right coast if this is billed as a states' rights initiative. It's all in the vocabulary, whether you're on the left or right. But whether you're on the left or right, you want your family to have health care. That's not a partisan value. And people want better care to more people for less money, and it doesn't matter what political party they belong to.
Dare I hope.
I'm working on it, Don. Give me another week or 2, but I'm working on it.
Yeah.
This is an initiative that won't stop. As I mentioned, the important part of this poll, the important part of all of this energy that's building up, is that the Democratic candidates are right to be talking about health care. And they're right to be thinking about what's best for everyone. And they're right to be thinking about how can we make this attractive to all parties, not just us. As I mentioned, whatever your policy as a presidential candidate, it's not going to work if you're not elected.
There's the rub. What are we going to do about that, my friend?
Well, Oregon only has mail-in votes, so we can't jam the voting machines around the country anymore. What we need to do is get honest. We need to listen to the cry from people everywhere that say, we don't want the fancy vocabulary, we don't want the nuances, we don't want party approval. We want access to health care for our families. We want to pay less money. We want to have better outcomes. We don't want to be at the bottom of the civilized world when it comes to healthcare outcomes at high expense with low access. People want to change that. No one can say, my constituents aren't concerned. They are.
Can we roll the dice ahead of time here and to the near future and then see what the outcome is going to be? Who are going to run against Trump?
All right. Don't tell anybody, but I think the best Democratic candidate is
Biden?
yes.
Oh, come on.
He's an old white guy with a big mouth who has no perceptible health care policy, but he can win. Here's what the polls tell us.
What?
First, any Democratic candidate in a national poll beats Donald Trump. Some of them by just a whisker, like Pete Buttigieg, 0.1%. Some by 6 to 8 points, Bernie Sanders or Joe Biden. Second is, no matter who runs against Donald Trump, he always gets 40% of the vote. That's his base. That's what we're running against. He's got, before the flag even drops, he's got 40% of the vote signed up. And lastly, it's not important that the candidate win a national poll, because getting an extra 1 or 2 million Democratic presidential votes in a Democratic state like California or New York or Massachusetts will make no difference in the Electoral College. We need to pick up just 0.1% of voters, 100,000 people. We don't even need that many to change their vote in 4 states: Pennsylvania, Ohio, Michigan, Wisconsin. These are the swing states that went by Donald Trump by just a little bit. If we convince a couple, 10 or 20,000 voters in each one of those states to vote Democratic, then the Democratic candidate will win both the popular vote and the Electoral College, and the sun will come up again.
Keep hope alive. Was that Jesse?
After this Democratic presidential primary campaign, and we have a candidate, whoever that candidate is, I'm hoping that they remember that they need those 100,000 Trump voters. Not all 60 million of them, just a sliver of them. So they don't try to move, they don't try to run a polarizing campaign.
God, it's a cult. I keep repeating myself. A cult. I'm trying to get you to do some magic over there and say, here's the answer.
Not everybody, not all of those 60 million people who voted for Donald Trump are white nationalists. There were many people who voted for Donald Trump simply to get anti-abortion Supreme Court justices. That's all they cared about.
Okay.
There were others who voted for Donald
Yes.
Trump just because they wanted a business-friendly president. They didn't care about anything else. Others voted for Donald Trump because they were conventional, normal Republicans that might be in, you might work next to them, who just couldn't bring themselves to vote for Hillary Clinton.
There was a dominant factor for those people who voted for Donald Trump.
Yeah?
You can't overcome racism and that kind of stuff going on deep in the back of it. There's a different motivation.
There aren't 60 million racists. Maybe there are 30 million of them. But that leaves the other half of the Trump voters who held their nose while they voted for him, knowing he was a racist and they weren't. But they wanted somebody who was closer to their abortion stance, to their business stance, to their conservative value stance. And they really wished that there was some other Republican other than Donald Trump they could vote for, but they didn't have that option. We've got to give them that option.
Yeah.
A better candidate than Donald Trump.
Let's see if we can have some closing comments from
Yes.
you about relative to the topic that we're discussing here.
Let me speak to your viewers, if I could.
Of course, please.
This is your weapon of mass destruction. This is a simple pen. You write your elected officials. You write your legislators, your House, your representative in the Oregon House, the senator in the Oregon Senate, your U.S. representative, your 2 senators, and you give them a 3-sentence message. 1, our healthcare system is a failure to my family. 2, I want universal health care that assures care to my family no matter what happens to me. And 3, I want you to make it happen. Sincerely, your voting constituent. P.S. Let's have coffee and you'll tell me what your plan is. That's how you convert this into a powerful weapon. And by the way, if your elected representative says, I don't have a plan, tell them you know this doctor that you saw on the Dr. Don show has got a really good plan to give them. And you can share them my email address.
Well said. All right, looks like it's time for us to close. I wonder if we have time for, thanks for watching. Thanks so much for watching. And remember, KFC, not Kentucky Fried Chicken, Dr. Don's KFC. Kind, friendly, and charitable. And thank you so much for coming on.
Don, it's a pleasure. And let's spend a little time with this absolutely fabulous sign you have here. Mm-hmm. Be kind to even unkind people. They need it most.